Welcome back, comrades. This is Gaming with Austin. We're on episode 22 of the Utopian Community series. Like, this is season 2. Let's talk about population control. Whenever it goes to immigration, my critique towards towards banning immigration altogether towards anti-immigration, a lot of it's related to overpopulation. What we need to do to help reduce the population growth rate in America is we need to increase our marriage age. Not only that, we also need to also increase the age of consent. Because one of the sources of overpopulation that is going on in America right now is teen pregnancies. Teen pregnancies are kind of concerning for me. Parents should pledge two or less children. Around the world. Not just in America, but around the world. One thing we also need to do to help achieve zero population growth is reduce the infant mortality rate, because when infant mortality rates are high, parents are biologically driven into having more kids, regardless of education. So they can ensure that some of those offspring, at least 2 of them, can survive to adulthood and reproduce. So they can ensure that some of those offspring can survive and reproduce. My idea of reproducing as a single person one method is through adultery. I know some people would see it as immoral, but some guys do it all of the time to help families have kids. Because I know there are some husbands out there in this world who are trying to have their spouses conceive but to no avail. How are we going to achieve zero population growth? Try to control our immigration. And if we don't do anything about overpopulation, nature will take over. Nature will take over. in controlling our population through the use of predators, to where they would take out the weakest animals. While the strongest ones survive and reproduce. In the world of biology, there are two types of animals. There's predator and there is prey. We humans are somewhere in between as a species. Because there are animals out there today, they're man-eaters. Animals that eat humans as part of their natural diet. During the early days of human history, there was a man-eating bird that hunted humans as a food source. If we don't do anything about our overpopulation, nature's going to take over, whether we like it or not. We can only produce so much food at once. Because one of the constraints we must face when it goes to food production is if the land is suitable for farming. $600 to 800 million years from now, carrying capacities of all animals will get reduced by a lot. Us humans have some control over our population growth. Like, my concern with some of the conservatives is that they want to limit our access to birth control to all of us. In fact, some of them want us to have as many kids as possible, without regards to child mortality. In the poorly developed regions of the world, there is a biological drive for humans to have so many kids at once, out of a generation. There is a biological drive for that. Like with all animals, when the infant mortality rate is really high, the parents end up having a lot more more offspring, because they have to ensure that some of them can survive to adulthood. They have to ensure that some of them can survive. It's the biological drive for parents to have so many kids when healthcare is lacking. Which probably explains the population explosion in Africa. One thing the governments within Africa need to do is stop being corrupt. Is to stop being so damn corrupt. Yes, that's right. Their corruption is... Fascism always leads to corruption. Wanna know why? Militarism. They focus mostly on the military. What fascism is basically a combination of extreme capitalism. Like, it's basically, like, in the economic sense, fascism is like capitalism on steroids. It's like putting capitalism on steroids. Like, competition can get pretty violent in a fascist country. which members of the small businesses that go bankrupt, like, in that sense, in my story, like, in the with the fascist country, not only would they oppose abortion at all costs, like, want it banned at all costs, they would ban all forms of contraception. If a woman refuses to get pregnant, can't get pregnant, they'd be kidnapped by the authorities. The woman would get raped. I'm not trying to offend any of you female viewers out there, but this is part of the story. Like, not only the fascist country would have an extreme pro-life stance, they'd be extremely natalistic, meaning they want to abolish birth control too. They don't just want to the fascist regime doesn't just want to abolish abortion at all costs like in the Vatican. They want to also abolish all forms of birth control. They'd be extremely natalistic. What natalism refers to, whenever it goes to procreation, I tend to have a neutral stance when it goes to it. I tend to have a neutral stance towards it. If we humans are beginning to become endangered species because of climate change, one thing we'd have to do, like, if the climate change is irreversible, we'd have to live underground. We'd have to live underground. My stance on abortion, I am a pro-choice person. I am pro-choice whenever it goes to abortion. But a lot of super religious Christians are pro-life. Some of them are also some of those pro-life Christians that go to church every Sunday and every Sunday morning and Wednesday evening are also against birth control. Because the reason for that is that they want to maximize their membership. They want to increase the membership as fast as possible. Truth about religion is, it's not necessary to use religion as a way to save the world. We have nature for that. We have nature for that. We have nature for that. One thing I discovered about teens staying up late is humans are not the only, like, adolescent humans are not the only animals. Humans are not the only animals that do it during their adolescent years. A lot of animals do it too during their adolescent years, regardless of discipline. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the discipline. Teens will still stay up late regardless. It's not just teenagers that stay up late. Pregnant women tend to have a habit of staying up late too. My critique against a later school day is increased traffic. Increased traffic accidents. Like, the problem with our society is that teens are forced to go to bed unnaturally, or they are forced, basically, based on how school starts now, usually teenagers are forced to go to bed unnaturally early. We are forcing our teenagers to go to bed unnaturally early. We are forcing our teenagers to go to bed unnaturally early. This is a pretty big deal. School should start later at all costs. Because a lot of children, they go to bed very early and end up waking up very late. That is because they are still growing. The reason why children don't listen to their parents on the very first try, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're in a stage of life in which they are hyper curious. Their curiosity goes on to adulthood, regardless of education. And that curiosity helps us survive. You gotta understand that curiosity, being curious, it's natural for us to be curious. Like, forcing people to not rubberneck near a car accident, it's unnatural. It is unnatural. Being greedy causes people, is the victim, it may be natural for you to be greedy, but it's unnatural for others when you become greedy. You're forcing your victims to do stuff into like when you're greedy, you're causing other victims to suffer, which means we shouldn't be waging war at all. What made humans greedy from the start? It's something. It's found in all that greed is. It's not just found in humans. It's found in every animal that has ever set foot on this earth. From the cryogenian to the present. From the cryogenian to the present. Back then, long before humans, we had to compete for resources. Animals had to compete or die out. Or adapt. I think it'd be better if we'd adapt. How can we adapt to food scarcity if we slow down our metabolism? If we slow down our metabolism, that's great. Basically, it's one of the possible scenarios that would happen if there was food scarcity. We would have to adapt. It's one of the possible scenarios. We are in a constant state of war with mice. That is because we're not the only animals that need that grain to survive. Mice need it too. They need that grain to survive as well. Not just us humans. Thankfully, we have a solution that can help us keep up with our competition with mice. Cats. We are basically in an evolutionary arms race with mice. We are in an evolutionary arms race with mice. How will we adapt with food scarcity? How do we adapt to it? Those with the slower metabolisms end up survive long enough to reproduce. Because whenever... The truth about why nothing is free, you gotta go to the laws of thermodynamics. Every biological process has to give off some form of heat. We're gonna make some boom boom. We don't have to wage war over resources if we can adapt. Bombs away! I am hunting. We are basically in an evolutionary arms race. Like, we'd have to compete with mice over a crucial resource. We are not the only animals that need that grain to survive. In fact, there are other animals that need the grain to survive too, like rats, mice. If you want to know, the real reason why nothing is ever free, not even your freedom is free, because some of our freedoms are restricted on an international level. you know, anything that requires energy is not free. Making big booms. You know, some of our freedoms. The ultimate weapon. She should not lock the open door. Run away, run away, run away. Full moon is on the sky. I'm here on my own anymore. Boom. Five. Out of the silent planet. Oh yeah. You know, incentive for people. Incentives for people to stop committing crimes will not help with the terrorist problem, because some of it's related to legitimate resource shortages, like food shortages. Whether there's a price for the food or not, some people would... If we don't do anything about the prices in a food shortage, the government would have to take control of it. Regardless. To make sure we don't run out of those resources. One thing that can cause food scarcity around the world: climate change. Another factor: mice are another problem we have. The war that's going on in the War on Terror, the type of war it is, it's sort of a holy war. It's basically a war on religion. Like, between countries with freedom of religion and Islamic extremists who are trying to who are doing everything they can to spread Islam under the name of their so-called god Allah. Allah. Their so-called god Allah. child trafficking problem. There's a huge demand for child prostitutes around the third world countries, which are struggling. The most important thing we need to do is ensure that some of our children can survive to adulthood. Anyways, this is it for this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked this video. Dislike if you disliked it. Subscribe for more. Share this with your comrades on social media. As always, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. And peace out.